Alright, hi, welcome. How are you guys doing? Today's gonna be a new type of video. I'm trying something different. I basically just had like a month off. My school is weird where it goes year round, but I took a month off of school and I also had a vacation and I had a period where I was getting paid to bunny sit. I could expand on that further, but I'm not gonna do that in this video. Anyway, while I was bunny sitting, I basically was getting paid to take care of this animal, and a majority of that involved me sitting around in the apartment. So I had a lot of time to read. What I'm trying to say is I got through a lot of books in this past month, and so I wanted to do a little like summary review of each of them because I really enjoyed some of the books that I read and didn't enjoy some of the other ones. So I just want to let you know what I read and give you a little vlog about my summer, because vacation backstory here. Me and my family went on a road trip from Oregon to Washington, and basically we were driving, and I can read while driving. Apparently some people can't do that. Let me know in the comments, can you read while someone else is driving? Because my sister can't read while someone else is driving. I think that's weird. Anyway, we were driving a lot, and so I read a lot. And so yeah, as I'm going through the books, I'll talk about my time on vacation a little bit and what I was doing while reading them. This is just kind of a situational video of what's going on in my life and just updating you what I've done this past month. Yeah, I might try to do more of these in the future as I'm doing stuff in the film industry. They might be somewhat interesting depending on what I'm working on. Let me know if you'd be interested. All right, let's get started. Oh my gosh, why did yeah. So, starting off first and strong, I finished the Percy Jackson series, which as a kid I started the books, but I never finished them. And so at the beginning of the year, I started the series, and I got through most of them and then kind of stopped and read a couple other things. And then, so this was me coming back to this at the beginning of this month. I started this book on 4th of July weekend. I went home. Anytime I have a flight is whenever I start to read again, because it's a long period of time, and I, rather than like try to watch a movie on my phone or something, which is kind of like crappy quality, I prefer to just read, you know? And that has like re-sparked my interest in reading multiple times, and luckily this time I've like really held on to it, and I've been on a lot of flights, which has also helped. But so flight home for 4th of July weekend got me into reading again. Read this, I loved it. I felt like it was such a great conclusion. My only thing is that I was kind of expecting just like a little bit more, just solely because of me knowing that the series is still ongoing. It was such a perfect conclusion that I was like, I almost don't want there to be more books. Like, I almost would prefer for this to just be it. But I know that there's books 6 and 7 and another one coming out, I'm pretty sure. And then there's like a ton of spin-off series to also read, which I'll possibly get around to. We'll see. Let me know which one I should start with if you guys think I should get into the rest of this series, because I finished the 5. Now there's how many more? But yeah, it took so long for Percy and Annabeth to like talk about their feelings, which is one thing, is like a trope I love but hate so much, because it's just like, if they just were like, it was just so clear how strongly they felt about each other, since like book 2 I feel like is when their like relationship really took off. But it was just so clear how they felt about each other, and it took till book 5 for them to like finally actually act on it and have a full conversation about their feelings with each other, which was just, yeah, I understand it, but it's just so frustrating but satisfying at the same time. I love how they do such a great job with expanding on each of their abilities with each book, but not like overdoing it, I feel like. But I mean, okay, Percy is like god level in this book, but like it's earned and it's justified with everything he does. I don't want to spoil stuff in case people haven't read this one, even though this is like, yeah, been out for so long. But yeah, all their powers are very justified and like feel like a growth of the characters from through the books, and it's just very satisfying for all these characters to have their heroic moments, and it's all earned. Like, it's like we've been waiting for this. It was just really cool to see like all the characters come together for the final battle and everyone had their moment. Everyone had their like little way to shine and help out, and it was just really fun. Okay, Percy Jackson. That started my month, July 4th. So I finished that and then immediately started this series because I saw that it was coming out on BBC, and I love BBC. And so I was like, I want to watch the show, but I don't want to, like, I want to read the book first. Generally, that's just the better way to experience adaptions, in my opinion, is to read the book first and then the TV show. Because if you watch the TV show first and then read the book, you're just going to be kind of confused, I feel like, about like, oh, I didn't know this. Because like, you watch a TV show and you fill in a lot of the gaps yourself. You get to like answer questions that they don't answer. But then you read the book and you're like, oh no, they were answered. The TV show just didn't say it, you know? And that can be kind of a frustrating experience. So I prefer the other way. But I loved this. I thought it was just a really well done and well crafted mystery. I will say, like, when did I figure it out? I think it was like about halfway through. I don't want to spoil too much, but with just like where someone found a certain piece of evidence, I was like, oh, it's probably this person. And it did end up being that person. But then there's also like other twists that come along with the book. And I will say, I did not expect the twist. That's where they got me really good. I was thinking it was going to be... Anyway, I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but it's just a really well done insight to like a teenage girl and the resources that a teenage girl has at her disposal with the internet and how much she can investigate, but then also seeing how it slowly starts to kind of consume her. She gets obsessed with this mystery and starts putting herself in very dangerous situations. But then there's also like, I really like kind of the parallel of she's a teenage girl doing this, and like we're so used to like 30-year-old male detectives doing this stuff that seeing it from a teenage girl perspective makes you really understand the danger of just showing up and asking someone about, hey, where were you when this crime was committed? Like, that's really sketchy. It just really added to the tension. I felt like it was just a really, like, and also, okay, there's some loose ends at the end of this, and all of the questions I had at the end of this book were answered in the future books, which is just really amazing and takes a lot of skill to do well. And also, like, things that I thought I understood from this book, you get a different perspective on. So I still kind of want to reread this, but I haven't gotten to it yet. Yeah. Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Check it out. I'm hoping it gets a season 2 because I love this one as well. Good Girl, Bad Blood. Also by Holly Jackson. I didn't say the freaking author names. Percy Jackson is Rick Riordan. I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry. And then this is Holly Jackson. But oh, okay. This I thought was just such a brilliant way to do a sequel and amp up the tension of the first book. Because the first book is 100% about a crime that took place 5 years ago. And she's like poking around and digging up the past. And in the process of doing that, she like stirs up dangerous situations. This book is about a missing persons case. And so I don't want to, I won't really say too much because I feel like it is somewhat a spoiler who goes missing. Okay, well, it's on the back of the book, so it's not really a spoiler, so I'm going to talk about it. But why I liked this book a lot is because it was 100% set in the present, and she had a limited amount of time to try and figure this out, is basically how this book was structured compared to the other one. The other one took place over, like, a year. That's not correct, but it took place over a long period of time, and this one takes place over, like, I don't want to say how long it actually ends up taking place because that's kind of a spoiler. This one is about Jamie going missing, and Jamie was mentioned in the first book, but he wasn't really an important character in the first book, and neither was Connor. Connor was one of her friends. So Connor comes to Pip and asks her to help him find Jamie. And so it kind of restructures things as Pip, who's emotionally traumatized from what happened in the first book, is struggling and getting dragged back into another mystery because she feels obligated to help her friend. And so this one was interesting, but I will say it was an unexpected ending. This one I started reading while pet sitting the rabbit. But yeah, basically I had to hang around this apartment and feed the rabbit twice a day. And so it just gave me free time to sit around and read. And it was awesome. So 10 out of 10 recommend pet sitting if someone asks. And it's a chill pet because the rabbit was so easy to take care of. Anyway, what else do I want to say? Also, the podcast element was so cool because now she has fans and also like haters. And so everyone in the town now knows who Pip is and has heard about her and how she digs up mysteries. And so that was just an interesting element. And adding also Connor into the mix because Connor was just not a major character at all. So adding him as a major character in this book really was just interesting to see Pip's relationship with him compared to Ravi. I also, one thing I didn't love was Ravi was kind of absent from a decent amount of this one. He just, he was doing other things, but it, was a lot of Pip and Connor time and not as much Pip and Ravi time. So, I finished this book, not while pet sitting, but on my flight to Washington, which was then when I started the actual vacation. Finished this on that flight, and sad story. I went to start the third book and realized I had left it in the bathroom at the airport, and it was gone, so there was no hope. And so I had to resort to reading my second book that I had brought with me and had in my carry-on with me. And that was Four Found Dead by Natalie D. Richards. And this one was an interesting book, but it was by no means a favorite of mine. Mainly because, Four Found Dead, and basically what this is setting up is that these people are locked in an abandoned mall, and there is a killer on the loose, and they have to basically find ways to hide and try and escape this mall that has been boarded up for reasons. Yeah, so I went into this expecting kind of a fun slasher whodunit. Hey, what's gonna happen next? Who is the killer? Who can we trust as we're wandering around in the dark? You know? That sounds fun, doesn't it? No. About 30 pages in, it is made abundantly clear who the killer is, and the rest of the book is just them trying to get out of the mall. And it wasn't bad by any means, but just watching, basically there's a group of 7 people, and the book, 4 found dead. So it's basically just 300 pages of watching people get picked off by this killer, and you know who the killer is the entire time. Some people might like that, but for me, I enjoy wondering, hey, who could have been there to kill him? Who was in the situation to kill that person, and why don't we know who it was? That's much more fun for me, and so that just took out a lot of the fun from this book, and so I read this pretty quick, but just because I just wanted to get it done and move on to another book. And so essentially we landed in Oregon and stayed the night in a hotel, and then we drove and spent a while in the car getting to Bend, where we then spent a couple days, which Bend, Oregon is just really beautiful, and it's close to a lot of hiking, and we had friends who used to live there and just recommended we stayed there. It was awesome. 10 out of 10 recommend. On the drive to Bend, I finished this book. While we were in Portland, Oregon, we stopped at Powell's City of Books, and we were able to find a copy of the next book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, As Good as Dead, which I was blown away by, in my opinion. I may just be easy to please. That may just be a me thing, but this book was amazing. It quickly became my favorite of the series and one of my favorite books. I wouldn't say top 10 books of all time or anything like that, but probably in my top 50 currently. this book was really good. I really enjoyed it. It recontextualizes multiple things that happen in the first and second book while not like trampling on anything, but it perfectly ties up everything in just such an amazing and unexpected way. Like, if you go into this book and you expect the ending, I will be surprised. I would be genuinely impressed because I was shocked, to be honest, because I had some idea of the direction that it was going, but then when it really took off, I was just very, very impressed with this book and how perfectly executed it was. The only complaint I have with it is the fact that like it ended, and that's just like an unfortunate reality of books, is when you really, really, really like a series and you really like characters and you get attached to them, eventually they still have to end. And like, I don't really want her, I'm not pressuring her to write another book or start a spin-off series or anything like that, but I just wish we got a little bit more time with Pip. And I won't say anything more about that or like situational things, but I just kind of like, I want the journey, I wish the journey kept going, you know? That's my personal opinion. But it perfectly tied everything up, which is why I'm like, it doesn't need another book, but I want it to have another book, which is just a really good place to be. Like, you know, if you end your series in a really satisfying way where the audience doesn't have any follow-up questions, but they still want more, that's like the perfect place to be, you know? She has the option to do a spin-off or something, but she also, I really want to check out reappearance of Rachel Price, because apparently that one's supposed to be good too. Please let me know. I haven't gotten that one yet, but that's one that's currently on my list. But yeah, I finished that one in Bend. We were there for 2 days and then like an afternoon. And the 2 days, like those nights, I spent like probably 5 hours straight reading outside on our porch. And I got multiple bug bites, which was not fun. And then the morning we left, I like woke up and sat on the porch and read the rest of it, like finished it. And I felt a little sad after that. But then I started Bury Your Gaze, which, okay, I bought this also at Powell's Books. This is where I bought all of the books I got on my trip. Chuck Tingle. I didn't know who this was, but after reading the book, I did a deep dive on Instagram and quickly became obsessed with him as a person. Anyway, that's off topic. That's a me thing. But Bury Your Gaze is really good. It literally came out a month ago, but it was like on a shelf at the bookstore, and so like I grabbed it. And it is about a screenwriter who is told he has to kill off 2 of his main characters because he wants them to be gay. Yeah, that's just kind of the baseline premise. But to go further into why the book is appealing, is the horror premise is that after refusing to kill off his gay characters, the creatures from his previous successful scripts start coming after him. So the things he wrote about in the past start showing up and trying to kill him. And so that's like just the setup. I don't want to spoil too much because there is just a lot of interesting twists and interesting world building. But one of the elements I really, really loved was just the studio element and mixed with just like the industry today. It was very modern and very like up to date with the state of the screenwriting industry after the strikes and everything that happened in the past couple years. Just, I feel like the screenwriting industry has changed a ton and people are still trying to figure out what exactly all of that means. And so this book is just a really interesting kind of like moment of this character of a screenwriter being stuck in the questions and not really knowing what's going on with the industry. And then at the same time, the questions about the industry are leading to him having to literally fight his demons from his past. Because there's also a really interesting structure with backstory, and some of the backstories were hard to read and like really like just kind of like depressing, but they were very honest, which is just the unfortunate truth, but just seeing his backstory moments were very heartbreaking to read. But there's also a lot of other moments that were hard to read. I also really loved the arc of the main character. Again, I don't want to spoil this book because I really, really, really loved the book, and the arc that the main character goes on through this book, I feel like, is just a really personal one, and anyone who's queer or part of the queer community, I feel like you should have your own experience with this book and your own opinion on him as a character, because he's a very complex character and he makes a lot of mistakes, so to say, but he grows a lot, and his overarching message that, I don't want to like spoil anything, but he has a like final speech towards the end of the book, and that speech is just a very moving moment, and I felt like it really highlighted a lot of the problems with queerness in the media industry right now. And this book just does not shy away from the way that queer people are treated in media. And that's something that I really wasn't that educated on. I was aware of just from my own personal experience with queer media. But reading this book and having it put to words was just a really nice experience, and felt very validating in that, like, it does suck that queer representation is kind of crappy and continues to be kind of crappy. But it also highlights some of the flaws that come with overdoing it with the queer media as well. So check this out. It's a new book. I'm going to read his first novel. What's it called? Camp Damascus. Check it out. Highly recommend this one. Yeah. The other thing was, I read this while we were camping in Washington. Me and my sister were staying in a tent, and my parents got themselves a freaking room. And so, yeah, I was like out on the like patio area, if that makes sense, like outside the front of the tent reading this by myself. And there's one body horror scene where there's something, I don't want to like spoil too much, but there's something inside of somebody and trying to get it out, and it was very gross. And that was the point that I literally had to put the book down. Anyway, while the book is very touching and very emotional, it is also very scary, and there's multiple parts that were genuinely very upsetting to be reading, and I had to take several breaks because I was literally out in the woods in the dark. It was a very terrifying experience, but it definitely heightened my experience reading. So I recommend reading horror out in the middle of the woods. That's a great idea. Do it. Lastly, I read The Bell Jar, which, so me and my friend Aiden, we both had been wanting to read this, but like neither had like worked up the courage to read it, if that makes sense. But so me and her texted back and forth while we were reading it, and like gave each other analyses of where we were at with it, and our analysis of the character of Esther. But yeah, this book was very interesting, and it was definitely a huge adjustment in reading, because this writing style is like nothing I've really read before. She doesn't really like spoon feed you anything. She'll jump in time, and she'll jump from event to event and from character to character without like any hesitation or explanation. And it can be kind of jarring to read, but once you kind of accept that, and once you like understand that that is also part of us understanding her mental state in this moment, like there's a reason that it's spaced out like that, and the reason like she's jumping all over the place. And yeah, like that's what I found really interesting, was the way the writing moved with her mental state. Like at the beginning of the book, things were more polished, then they got more messy, and then they got very scattered to the point that like just things were all over the place. And then I don't think this is one that you can really spoil, but I won't go too many details into the plot. But at the end, her writing style just becomes very flat and doled out, And that was just really interesting. It really tracked the progression of her mental health through the book, just through how it was written. And that was insane. I understand why this book has been praised for a long time. But I did have a lot of personal problems with the way they portrayed certain things. But I think this is a book that you need to go into once you understand the time period a little bit better. But there is just a lot of things in here that happen and that she says or that happen to her that are just really not okay in any way. And just reading it was kind of rough, and it was just kind of weird. It was just a weird read of just seeing life back then and what was acceptable, and just the fact that that was acceptable and published. Anyway, very interesting book, very interesting insight to how mental health was handled and treated back then, which was just horrifying, but definitely not an easy read. Definitely not something that I'd say just pick up on a whim. This is something you need to hey, I'm going to read this and I'm going to do an analysis of this as a work of historical fiction. This isn't something to just go in oh, this is going to be a fun read. No, it's not. It's definitely was more work to get through this. And so this is the book that I started towards the end of our trip, but it took me the flight home from Washington to Missouri and the flight from Missouri to LA to get through this. And it's not really a long book. It is 230 something, 244 pages, but it took me a while to get through. And I do recommend it as something that if you are interested on the topic of mental health and the history of it, but it's not something I would recommend as a vacation read. It was not an easy one to get through. But yeah, that was my vacation and my reading journey on that vacation. And since then, I have been reading this book, Cuckoo. I'm currently about halfway through this book and I'm really enjoying it. It's just kind of taking me a while to get through because there's a lot to track and I'm finding myself rereading certain portions. So writing style isn't my favorite so far. It's kind of a difficult read because I'm going back and being wait, what happened to who? Because there's so many characters. But along those lines, it's still a very interesting horror, and I have a lot of questions and not a lot of answers, but we're gonna see what happens. But along with that, I listened to the audiobook of The Great Gatsby while hiking, which was really fun because I put off reading that for so long just because I was oh, that's such a snooty American literature book. I don't need to read that. And then I listened to it and I loved it, which I was punching myself for. And then I listened to the audiobook for Save the Cat, and I'm currently listening to the audiobook for The Midnight Library, which I'm really enjoying that. But so I'm kind of listening and reading at the same time, which has been interesting. Because just two very different story worlds and very different story vibes. But anyway, that's where I'm at right now with my reading. If you guys would like another book update from me at some point in the future, please let me know because I enjoyed talking about these and it was nice to reminisce on what I just spent a month reading. And hopefully I keep this energy up. I feel like this video will hopefully motivate me to keep on reading, and hopefully it'll motivate you to read a little bit because I have found that reading has given me a much better attention span, and that has been so valuable because it's taught me to focus on one thing, and that if something else comes into my head, to take a moment and write it down and clear it from my head and then go back to the task I'm working on, which has just been so helpful in so many areas of my life. So I highly recommend picking up reading as a hobby if you don't already. But anyway, I've been talking for a while now. Thank you so much for watching this video and listening to me give you a recap of what I read this month. I honestly had so much fun this month with all the reading I was doing, and as someone who is trying to get into the film industry in the screenwriting area, reading also really helped me to start writing on my own a lot more than I previously was, because It used to be kind of a thing that I would do every couple of days or every so often, you know? I would work on a script, knock out a page or two. But now it's becoming like I'm reading and I'm like, oh, I want to go work on this. And so I go and work on my script and get a lot more done because my mind is like actively engaged. But yeah, I've just really loved seeing the effects that reading has had on my life. And hopefully if I do a follow-up to this, I'll be able to give further positive affirmation on the benefits reading has had on my life, because I've barely scratched the surface on what I think reading can do for helping me like clear some of the fog that social media has put in my head. And I just want to share that with you guys further as it develops. Thank you for watching, and leave a comment to tell me what you're reading currently. I always love recommendations, or just let me know if it sucks. That would also be helpful because I'll avoid it then. And yeah, make sure to like and subscribe because that really does help me out a lot. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.